We have a big update for you that has to do with the engine recall on the newish 2022 and 2023 Toyota Tundras, because you've been asking us many questions, and our producer Zach and us, we came up with a lot of answers.
Yeah, this is a stack of notes on the problem. This is something that we've covered a little bit so far, but there's a lot to go into here. Like you said, still unanswered questions. So in this video, we want to talk about what's happening with the Tundras. We want to talk about how many trucks are affected. Could there be more out there? What does this mean for the Tundra and actually the Lexus LX as well? And what to do if you own one of these vehicles.
Exactly. And some of your questions have to do with, I own a new Toyota Sequoia, right?
Yeah.
Has a very similar twin turbocharged V6 engine. There's a Lexus GX with a very similar engine. So there's a lot of questions stacking up. So let's start with what's happening, right? Because we have lots of notes here and we'll show you how to navigate all this stuff.
Yeah, so it's basically a recall around engine failures, and these reports started in mid-2023. Now, Toyota officially alerted the NHTSA about their intent to launch a voluntary recall around May 30th of 2024, so fairly recently.
Yeah, just a couple of weeks ago, really. And we did, like you said, another video recently, and then we're following this up with this. And if you are really curious about this, this is what Toyota had to, well, they submitted this voluntarily to NHTSA, which is a government organization, right? And it's nhtsa.gov. So if you're concerned about this, this is a very simple way to do it. Put your VIN in here or the year, make, and model of your vehicle. So I just typed in 2023 Toyota Tundra. And actually, dude, look at this. 9 recalls popped up.
Yeah, so
not just one.
What we're talking about is not the only thing that's going on with these trucks. So if you have one of these trucks, or any truck really, it's always good to keep an eye on what's going on with it, because maybe you might not notice something in the mail. So this is a good resource.
Yeah, and by the way, I mean, this video is about Toyota, but every manufacturer since the beginning of time, it seems, has had recalls.
Yeah.
And some vehicles have many recalls. So this is what we're talking about. Debris in the engine may cause a stall. So that's how you find this recall information. It's all right there.
Yeah, now specifically what Toyota told regulators about this particular recall that we're discussing in this video, and this is a quote, it's this recall covers vehicles equipped with V35A engines of a particular configuration that were manufactured during a certain period at particular engine plants. Breaking that down, specifically what they're talking about when they say a certain period is for Tundras and Lexus LX 600s that for the Tundra were produced between November 2nd, 2021 and February 13th, 2023, and for the LX 600 between July 30th, 2021 and November 25th, 2022. And it's not for every version of those vehicles. It's a particular model of the powertrain.
Yeah, and right now this recall doesn't cover hybrids. Even though that engine, the twin turbo V6, the 3.4 liter V35A code of the engine is in other vehicles too with hybrid systems. So that's why we're doing this video. You know, could there be something else going on here? So exactly. And by the way, another way, I mean, NHTSA.gov is one way. Another way is to call your dealer. Right?
Yeah.
You can give them your VIN, your concern, and they can help you out too.
Now, specifically what's going on with these engines that are impacted by the issue that's causing this recall, and again, we have a quote here, is the subject vehicles are equipped with a specific V35A engine that contains crankshaft main bearings which allow the crankshaft to rotate within the engine assembly while running. That's basically just an explanation of what main bearings do when they're working properly. The problem is, and again, we have a quote here, during a specific production period, there is a possibility that engine machining debris of a particular size and amount may not have been cleared from the engine during manufacturing and subsequently contaminated the engine assembly during the production process.
So the tolerances, I mean, you are familiar with many engines. I mean, your roommate is kind of a mechanic. I mean, you've played around with many different engines. The tolerances are really fine, especially the newer the engine is, the tighter the tolerances, right? Yeah. So if you have debris between, you know, rotating surfaces, that's really bad, right?
And obviously crankshaft main bearings are a pretty essential foundational part of your engine's operation. If the crankshaft main bearings go bad, there's not going to be a super easy way.
You can't pour some thing on top of it.
Yeah, so it's a serious issue. And basically the problem here is if those debris that they're talking about in these engines adhere to the bearings, again, we have a quote, an operation of the engine continues at higher loads over time, failure of the bearings may occur, which can basically create a critical engine failure.
Yeah, so basically what this is saying also is that the problem may not manifest itself immediately. It may take some time, depending on what kind of debris was left in the engine, where it ended up, right? So you could test your oil, you could do something else as you're kind of waiting for this process to complete.
Yeah, and it is also worth mentioning that this is an ongoing thing right now. It's not been completely worked through, and so trucks that were manufactured within that period that we're talking about here, trucks that are affected by this recall, it's not necessarily that every single one of them will be affected by this issue, but these are the trucks that are being investigated.
And we'll talk about a little bit more numbers as far as how many are affected.
Yeah.
So let's finish up what's happening sheet.
Yeah,
Because we have a timeline.
exactly.
So basically, the first report of an engine failure was reported to Toyota in early March 2022. So this has been more than 2 years, right? So Toyota began investigating, and here's a quote. Through this investigation, it was found that the main bearings had seized.
Yeah.
So it's been, they've been studying this for quite some time, basically. In late July 2022, a field report to dealer came out with 2 different V35A engines showing damaged bearings.
Yeah.
Okay.
And at that point, Toyota was hypothesizing that debris could be the cause of that damage, but they couldn't exactly determine the cause of it at that time. And so Toyota at that point implemented some cleanliness process changes in the manufacturing plants.
So basically, this engine we're talking about, the twin turbo V6, is manufactured mainly because we're worried about the largest vehicle count, which is the Tundra, in Toyota Motor Manufacturing, Alabama, near Huntsville. And that's where the bulk of these engines that are affected are manufactured. But I was reading also online that there's another factory that builds these engines too, and those engines could have the same processes, right?
Yeah.
Because all factories that do the same thing across the world
pretty standardized.
have the same processes, right?
Exactly.
So that makes sense.
And they're also saying that from September 2023 to January 2024, in that period of time, they started seeing from dealerships an increase in reports of some of these engine failures that seem to be involving the debris that we're talking about.
Yeah. And I'm just here, I'm just on the Toyota side, so you guys can see different configurations of Tundras.
Yeah.
So what happened next? In November of 2023, they started analyzing the bearings again. And in January 2024, Toyota requested the Alabama engine plant to provide all quality testing swatches used to capture debris samples dating back to this particular period.
Yeah, and then in February of this year, they even started pulling apart some engines that were still good, were still running fine, but trying to analyze some of the wear on motors that hadn't had a critical failure yet, but trying to see if they could maybe see some similar wear and a similar trend to what some of the engines that had failed were going through. And they did say that certain recovered engines showed some level of bearing degradation or damage, but had not shown signs of failure. So they've been sending some of these things to their engineering teams and design teams over in Japan for analysis, obviously launching a huge investigation into what's going on with these engines.
Yeah, obviously they're not going to just sit idly, right, when this issue is popping up for some customers. And by the way, if you think this is something new, the world is changing and it's getting worse and worse and worse, I have one interlude here that I kind of wanted to show you guys. In 2007, Toyota settled a class action engine sludge suit affecting 2.5 million Toyota and Lexus vehicles made between 1997 and 2002. Toyota agreed to repair sludged up engines for up to 8 years from the time of purchase. And this affected the 3-liter V6 back then. This is almost 20 years ago or more. So I'm just saying, sometimes issues prop up and manufacturers take care of these issues. And it can be a voluntary recall,
Yeah.
it can be something else.
Yeah, and these investigation processes that we're talking about are obviously a big part of getting those solutions underway. Now, in March of 2024, they had completed their durability studies on these bearings, and what Toyota identified was that, again, here a quote, maximum operation stress during driving, stress limits of each bearing, and size of debris that each bearing was designed to withstand under normal loading. So they were figuring out basically what's going on, what are the factors that are contributing to these issues.
So basically, that's what's happening. And then, as of May 20th, 2024, Toyota received from United States sources 166 field technical reports and 824 warranty claims. So out of 102,092 vehicles affected in this voluntary recall, 824 warranty claims have just so far been filed.
Yeah, and the breakdown between those vehicles that are affected by this recall, so 98,568 of them are Tundras, so it's the vast majority that are Tundras, but about 3,524 LX600 Lexus vehicles. So total just over 102,000 vehicles, but again, primarily Tundras.
And by the way, the Lexus has a slightly different version of that engine too, because it makes a little bit more power. So the Lexus vehicle has 409 horsepower as it's rated, and it's labeled, of course, twin turbo V6. And the Tundra engines are rated a little bit lower. It's just that, I mean, Lexus is a premium brand, right? So Lexus usually gets kind of the highest performance versions of those engines.
Yeah. Now, as for vehicles that are specifically affected by this, it's hard to pin down an exact number. So as Toyota said to the NHTSA, what they reported was that they're unable right now to estimate the percentage of the involved vehicles to actually contain the defect. However, the NHTSA does require some value to be entered as to how many vehicles are affected. So Toyota entered the value of 1 basically to say it's unknown at this point how many of these vehicles that are listed in this recall are actually affected by this particular issue.
It's a tough issue. Before we move on, I want to answer another question. Can dealerships sell recalled vehicles? That has been a big question that we received as well. And the answer is, if it is a new vehicle, brand new, coming off the shipping train or whatever, the answer is no.
Yeah.
So the dealer is required to solve whatever issue is out there on the brand new vehicle before they sell it. Now we're talking about used vehicles. This recall has to do with 2022s and 2023s. And there's a couple of answers here. First, there's a quote, and this is under Title 49, Section 30112 of the United States Code. Zach has been being very precise here.
Yeah.
A dealer cannot sell, offer for sale, or introduce or deliver for introduction or interstate commerce a new motor vehicle when it is aware that the vehicle does not comply with applicable federal motor vehicle standards or contains a defect related to motor vehicle safety. That's for new vehicles.
Yeah.
For pre-owned vehicles and used vehicles, here's a quote from Toyota. Toyota typically requests that dealers not deliver any pre-owned vehicles in dealer inventory that are covered by a safety recall until the defect has been remedied. We're not talking about stop sales.
Yeah.
There's certain things that issue a stop sale. There could be potential fire risk, something else. We're not talking about that here.
Yeah, and that with pre-owned vehicles, so Toyota, like he said, requests that dealers not sell those vehicles, but if they do, they are required to disclose that this is going on.
Yes.
So there's not going to be a situation where somebody is being sold one of these vehicles by a dealership
Blindly.
and they will have no idea that this is going on.
And if you're being sold a vehicle on Craigslist or Facebook or by somebody else, NHTSA is right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Type in the VIN.
It's well worth using these resources. Absolutely.
Check it out and you'll see it. So yeah, the dealership can sell. I mean, it's separate. Each dealership is a franchise, right? So it's a separate business. So they can sell, especially in Colorado, and it's very state by state, right? Some of the regulations. But they can sell, but they have to disclose what's going on.
Now, the other question that we have in our heads is, will this issue affect any of the other vehicles that use this engine, because this engine, like you mentioned, is in plenty of other vehicles, including, of course, the hybrid versions of the vehicles that are affected by this current recall.
Such as Sequoia.
Or
Sequoia
or
has
the
the
Sequoia.
same engine, and it's also a hybrid, right? All current
Yeah.
Sequoias are hybrids, and it uses the same gasoline engine.
Yeah. So at the moment, there aren't any rumors of this affecting any other vehicles with this engine. It does at present seem to be an issue specifically for non-hybrid versions of the Tundra and of the LX600 that were produced within that period. Time will tell if that issue moves on to any other vehicles that use this engine, but at the moment, there's really no reason to think that it will.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've read a couple of reports that people would do hybrid versions are reporting some problems, but there's not enough data, like you said, to conclude that yet.
Yeah.
Now, where are we at?
Well, Zach has in here some information about how many of these vehicles have been sold. Specifically with the Tundra, there's been 265,646 units sold since 2022. So there have been a lot of these vehicles sold, and it's been quite a few more of the non-hybrid versions of the truck sold as opposed to the hybrid, which, of course, the hybrid version of the Tundra came out later.
Yeah, so the breakdown is like, I mean, the most recent, for every like 10,000 Tundras they sell maybe 4,000. So about 40%, 30 to 40% are hybrids. So the majority of these trucks are still non-hybrids.
Yeah, so far in the beginning of 2024, there's been 36,000 units total, 12,000 of which were hybrids. Early on, the split was a lot more.
Yeah, but now they're kind of almost becoming 50-50, but not quite there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then LX600 sales since 2022 have been about 12,298. So, yeah, there's are a lot of vehicles that are affected by this, but one of the things that we want to figure out is what does this mean for the Tundra and the LX600 going forward? And a lot of this is going to come down to the impact that it has on the reputation of these vehicles, because this is news that a lot of people are asking us about, a lot of people are talking about it, and of course it's not the best press for these machines.
No, it's not. By the way, some other vehicles, the Lexus LS 500 with the same engine code but slightly different configuration is not affected by this. By the way, the LS 500 came out with this engine several years prior to the Tundra, twin turbo V6, and many manufacturers do this. You know, sometimes they have a low volume vehicle and they introduce an engine, you know, for a small number of vehicles, and then they kind of expand that engine availability through many different vehicles.
One, and to advocate for these vehicles, issues like these do crop up on vehicles from every manufacturer every now and then. It's just a part of making machines that are as complicated as these vehicles are. And to your point, this engine has been around 4 years already. And if this was a fundamentally flawed engine design, I think that would have shown itself already. So this just seems to be a particular crop of manufacturing that had this issue that's affecting some portion of those 102,000 vehicles.
Exactly. Yeah, so there's something else here. By the way, so no other, although other engines are in a similar family of engines, so they're switching to turbocharging across many different platforms and different sizes. This is not affecting any other engine. So there was a question about this. So we're only talking about the 3.4 liter twin turbo V6.
Yeah, so this engine is part of Toyota's larger Dynamic Force engine family, which includes the smaller 2.4 liter engine. But so far, that 2.4 liter is not seeing any of these issues. And again, like we're saying, a lot of the other versions of this V6 are not having these issues. So at the moment, there's no cause really for mass panic with all of these vehicles, but certainly it is worth looking into that NHTSA resource if you have one of the vehicles that potentially falls under this particular recall, and just keeping an eye on what's going on with it. And if you start to have some of these issues, it can crop up as an engine running rough, knocking, and of course
failure to start.
Yeah.
And also just engine while moving,
Yeah,
the
worst
engine
case
just
scenario.
seizes. Yeah.
Exactly. It could get to that.
By the way, there's a note here. The factory in Alabama that's building the twin turbo used to build the 4.6 1UR FE
Yeah.
V8,
And the
also the
5.7.
5.7 3UR FE, some of the legendary V8 engines
Yeah.
that
So they're
We've-
not new to building motors.
that we have sung praises of the mountaintop
Yeah.
about. So, yeah, so just an issue with some of these engines.
Yeah. Now, that's been our attempt to try and cruise through some of these extensive notes that we have on this issue and get you the most critical information to know. But we also want to talk about what you should do if you have one of these vehicles. And again, I mean, one of the best things that you can do to start off with is to go to NHTSA and
right
look
there.
at not only this recall and how it potentially
Some others.
affects yours, but everything else that's going on with
Can I
it.
point out an interesting recall that I found?
Yeah.
There's another one that's called Unexpected Vehicle Movement from February 21st,
Right.
2024.
Which sounds alarming when you.
Yeah,
first see it.
unexpected movement. Why would it move? And the problem is described like this. Unexpected vehicle movement may occur when the vehicle is in neutral and the brakes are not applied.
Yeah, which doesn't sound
Wait a minute.
unexpected to me at all.
No. I mean, if you're a driver and you are in neutral and you don't have
Yeah.
brakes applied, that's a definition of
Yeah.
a rolling vehicle.
Call me old school, but I expect a vehicle to move when it's in neutral with no brakes on. So it is worth looking at some of these
Yes,
recalls,
yes.
whatever vehicle that you have, because some of them are more serious than others.
Yeah, like incorrect load carrying capacity label.
Not a huge.
So some configurations of the Tundra were slightly mislabeled, not in a huge amount, but
Yeah.
that's just reprinting of a label to make it a little bit more safer,
Yeah.
for future and the current owners. An engine replacement would be something much more significant.
Yeah, definitely more significant. And as far as what's going to be done about this, Toyota so far has not issued a fix for this problem yet. That's
Right.
something that's still underway, something that they're working toward. But a complete owner notification should make its way to everyone, all the owners that are impacted by this, by July 29th of this year. So
Yes.
coming up fairly soon, they will be reaching out to people.
3 possible solutions that we've listed before, and we can quickly go over again. Short block engine replacement. This basically means a new block,
Yeah.
but the current vehicle would have to have, the engine taken out, all the accessories and everything taken off.
New bearings,
Yes.
basically a rebuild.
Yeah, a
on the
rebuild
engine.
of the engine, and then the new small short block with all the accessories being put back into the vehicle.
Yeah, which would be a huge amount of labor.
And also
As far as
opportunity for some
rebuilding.
errors, too. I mean,
Sure.
whoever the technicians are who are working on some of these engines, there could be some other, we're all human, right?
Yeah,
There could be some errors.
It's a big deal. That's a lot of work. The other option that they could have is a drop-in complete motor to replace the ones that they're pulling out. But that's less, although that's less labor than rebuilding the existing engine that's there, dropping in a ready-to-go one of those engines is very expensive. That's not a cheap thing to do.
And there's an estimate here between $15,000 to $20,000 that
Yeah.
Toyota could be paying
For those
if-
non-hybrid engines.
exactly.
Yeah.
Or a buyback, some sort of a buyback program where, if there's really an issue with some of these trucks, that the manufacturer could buy them back.
Yeah, so any one of these options is going to be
Expensive.
a pretty significant
Yeah.
deal. Yeah, it's not going to be a small thing to try and remedy this issue. So it'll remain to be seen which one of those routes Toyota ends up actually going, because there's pros and cons to each solution.
Yeah, so that's all the notes we have so far. Once again, if you're really super concerned, if you're a current owner, right, or you want to buy another Tundra or another Sequoia or another whatever, just check it out. Just do a little bit of homework, look at the VIN number. Sorry, VIN is vehicle identification number. I know this.
Yeah, yeah.
I get all the comments because I say number
Saying
twice.
is, but
Anyway, look at the VIN, check it out, and you can
Yeah.
just move forward.
that's all we have for the time being. But down the line, we are going to get more information on this, so we'll try to keep everybody as updated as possible.
Thanks for watching.